It's warning us.
Hey everybody, Jason Shadrick here with Premier Guitar, and we're with the tall one, Greg Koch.
Hey!
At Premier Guitar headquarters, and we're going to hang out, we're going to do some playing, we're going to answer some questions.
Yes.
So if you have any questions for Greg, drop them in the comments below, and I'll be shouting them out. And then later, at the end of this whole circus that we're going to do, we're going to be giving away three entire sets of his Fishman pickups, and that's the pickups and like the whole electronics thing.
The kit,
right? The
and the caboodle.
Right. So let's start off, Greg. Let's just have you play
Noodle?
a tune and get warmed up, and then we'll start diving in.
All right. I'll do a little morning blues rendition of some sort for the kids. Hey! What?
All right, Greg. So the questions are coming in faster than I can keep up with them. But a lot of people are asking if we could just, for what they're hearing, just kind of give a quick go through of what you're playing through today, from the guitar to the pedals to the amp. So tell us a little bit about what they're hearing.
All right, I will do this very thing you ask of me, Jason. Well, I'm just wrapping up a week's worth of gigs with the band, and we're traveling in a beautiful Honda Odyssey, which I like to refer to as the Cadillac of minivans. And in that vehicle, we have a Hammond B3 that's chopped with the Leslie speaker, my son's drum kit, and so I wasn't able to bring my whole pedal board, and I brought two amps. I brought my custom Vibrolux, which these came out in 1996, and they are different from the, like, just a straight reissue in the fact that there's reverb that works for both channels, and they took the negative feedback thingamabobby out. Don't let that fool you, like I know what I'm talking about, other than the fact that it behaves more like a tweed amp than a blackface amp. So it gives pretty early, and we're in a small space here, so I barely have the amp on. I'm in this normal channel. I'm on 1.5, and I'm using my triple gristle pedal. For years, my buddy Tim Yarning of Yarning, Tim Yarning, TJ Yarning Custom Effects. The luxury drive. We came out with a pedal called the Gristle King, and we sold them ourselves through our websites, my website, his website. T-Rex made them for a period of time, and then that ended, and then Tim tweaked the circuit a little bit. Then we had something called the Gristle King 3, clean boost and overdrive. And then at one point I said to Tim, I was like, you know what? I keep on hitting those little toggle switches. Just set it the way I like it and get rid of them. So then we came out with the Gristletone lean. And then at one point I said, I really want a cool fuzz. So he was working on these different fuzz circuits that would be usable and weren't so idiosyncratic. And he found a way to make a consistent fuzz. And we called that, I believe, the F-bomb 3 or 4. So once we got that fuzz really dialed in, I said, Tim, now make me a pedal that has all the things from the Gristletone and the fuzz. So I've been using what's called the triple gristle, and we only did 50 for my website, and I'm sorry for those that are still waiting for them, but it's literally 3 pedals in one, so it takes him a hell of a long time to make these, and he makes these after hours, so it's the lead time went from 2 months to like 5 months. And but that's what I'm using. And right now I have the clean boost on and the fuzz on. And I find that I use those 2 pedals. I have those on almost the whole time. And then I just back off on the volume and it cleans up enough. Still has a little sass to it. And then when I turn the volume up. Now, when I go for leads, if I want a little bit more of a gain push, that's where these handy-dandy pickups come in handy. Handy-dandy pickup, well, you know what I'm talking about. This little button right here with my signature pickups allows me to get a little bit more gristle. And basically what we say as the propaganda is that it goes from a white guard sound to a black guard sound. But in layman's terms, it goes from chimey and open sounding to just a little meatier and a little bit more output. It's subtle, but it comes in mighty handy. And then I just have a Boss DD3, which I haven't hit yet, but those are the only 2 pedals I brought along on this trip. So I use my triple gristle and the digital. If I turn the pedal off, this is what the amp's on. Here's the clean boost. Here's the clean boost with the fuzz.
Right on. Guitar.
This is a Fender Custom Shop Wildwood 1055 Telecaster. And for those of you who are not familiar, I do a bunch of videos for Wildwood Guitars out in Colorado. And they do custom runs of Fender instruments, Gibson instruments, all kinds of different manufacturers. And the Wildwood 10 thing means it's a 10-inch radius. It's 6105 frets, quarter saw neck. It's got to be a certain weight, and usually they have certain pickups in them. But of course, this guitar has my signature set of the Fishman Gristletones. Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
All right, so we have a bunch of questions. I can't even keep up here, so let me just see here. Natty Bo 1964 asks, what was the first song or what was the first guitarist that really made you want to play guitar?
Well, it was Hendrix. I was a Hendrix fanatic. So Hendrix, Cream era Clapton, and Led Zeppelin. But it was really Hendrix was. I mean, I was scared to learn any of his stuff right off the bat because it just seemed so otherworldly. Mm-hmm. But Hendrix was the guy at a very early age. I was saying yesterday, I was doing this radio interview, and we were talking about early influences. And when I was in 3rd grade, I did a report on Jimi Hendrix. And I remember my teacher going, he was a drug addict. And I said, well, technically he died from barbiturate intoxication. It wasn't really an overdose of heroin or anything. It was just a mishap with too many sleeping pills and some wine. But be that as it may. But I was a Hendrix fanatic very early on, primarily because my brother, who I roomed with, I was the youngest of 7 kids. My brother was 14 years older than I was, and then there were 5 girls in between. So I had to room with my brother, so I was exposed to his record collection. And when you're a wee lad and you're running into your bedroom with your buddies and your brother's on the floor listening to it in front of the record player, listening to Cream and just going, what are you listening to? This is Cream. the greatest guitarist, the greatest bass player, and the greatest drummer in the history of rock together. He's just going on and on. It makes a big effect on you. So to me, growing up, Cream era, Clapton, Hendrix were like, gods, literally. Metaphysicians, at least.
Right on.
Can you dig it?
I can. Another question here from Brogue3D. Any suggestions for getting kind of the thumb finger independence for probably Chet style playing? Because it's, Chet's playing that kind of fingerstyle playing can be kind of intimidating to leap
Absolutely.
into.
It's a nightmare. I remember, I didn't grow up listening to that stuff. And it seems like a lot of people that get into that style come by it naturally from, like their dad was into it, or their uncle, hey, check out the Chet thing. And it becomes like this whole thing. I had one uncle, and he worked at a bank. He didn't show me anything. You know what I'm saying? Nothing. So
except how to open a checking account?
Well, not even that. So when I got to college, I majored in music at a state college in Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. And there was a guy there that I met. Two guys, actually, my buddy Carl and his uncle, who was actually only a couple years older than he was, named Rob Warnberg. And Rob would, I'd say, do that Merle Travis thing. And he would get into his guitar case and he'd open up a little Sucrets case where he had his thumb pick. And he would launch into like Cannonball Rag or, whatever, a couple of different, either a Merle tune or a Chet tune. And to me, it was just, it was devilry. I had no idea what was going on. So at one point, I just made myself start to learn it. And I will just, obviously it's a very loaded question, and we can go on for hours on how to go about getting that kind of a sound. And I decided that I wasn't going to do the thumb pick thing. But when you're doing the thumb pick thing, you've got gravity working in your favor. So like if I just take that kind of a chord voicing, this is just an A7 with a ninth on top. And I'm actually muting the A string. I'm not even actually... it's not making any musical sound. And one of the things that I misconstrued early on is the fact that Travis picking had to be like, E string, D string, A string, D string. And I thought it had to be that thing. You learn that in your Hal Leonard guitar method and various other things, that it's got to be that kind of a thing. But when you listen to Chet or Merle, it's got that kind of, stride piano thing. That's what you're going for. You're just after that rhythm. So if I do this... in order to affect the thumb pick thing, in my groove with this type of picking is a little bit more piggy. Chet's is very stately. I was saying it sounds like someone galloping on a fine steed when he does it. When I did it, it's like you're falling down the street in some kind of impaired condition. But But with the thumb pick, as I said, you get gravity working in your favor. So the low notes are automatically have more of kind of a turgid sound to them. But when you're doing the picking fingers, the fingers popping up on the top strings are just automatically going to be louder, dynamically louder. So you have to concentrate on purposely kind of picking a little bit louder to make sure that you... And I'm using my thumb to kind of mute those lower strings. And the picking pattern I'm doing is just the pick is just going, and it's kind of a 2-bar pattern. I'll go. And then if you go to like the 4 chord, I'll do a D9, but I'll put the A in the bass, and that gives it more that. Off to the races. But just that kind of stuff, just working on a little blues in that regard. I mean, I think the first tune I worked on was that Cannonball Rag. So on and so forth. But it takes a while, but you just got to work at it and really make sure that those low notes have enough of a groove to them that they're not overshadowed by the popping of your fingers on the upper strings if you're doing the pick and fingers version of this thing.
Right on. So you started kind of with Cream and Hendrix. Chet made his way in at some point.
Yes.
When did kind of the jazz side of things?
Well, the jazz stuff lurked in as a result of you go to school, and if you play electric guitar and you're going to be involved and your family wants you to be involved in some kind of school activities, you end up being in jazz band. I didn't really grow up listening to jazz, but I did definitely love, like, the Rainy Day Still Dreamin' Hendrix thing, with the organ and the sax. And I mean, that stuff spoke to me. So I gravitated towards that stuff. So I always played in jazz band, freshman year in high school on. But jazz is, when you're a blues guy and a rock guy, you don't hear the jazz stuff. You have to really expose yourself to that stuff and listen to it in order for the more advanced harmonies to kind of sink in. And it's really not rocket science. That's one of the things that it was always something to me. I was like, why don't I hear this stuff? And then finally I realized, well, if you don't listen to it, you're not going to hear it. You know what I mean? It's like guys that play jazz listen to jazz. And back in the day, the reason why a guy like Wes Montgomery, even though of course he was extraordinarily talented, but it isn't like some kind of weird shape-shifting talent. It's like you listen to the stuff, and if your ear is acclimated to it, you will learn it if you practice it, And so I started really liking George Benson early on. I love George Benson, and then I went to when I was a junior in high school, I got a little scholarship from our band director to go to this jazz camp in Shell Lake, Wisconsin, and that's where I met Mike Irish, I would end up going to college, where he was the head of the jazz department. And he was very inclusive. A lot of times in a jazz environment, if you're more of a blues or a rock guy, they kind of like, you're kind of frowned upon because they want you to be a, ES-175 flat wound strings into a polytone amp guy. And if you're not fitting into that paradigm, they're like, well, why are you studying jazz? Which I understand both sides of the argument. So anyways, Mike was very cool. I was playing a Telecaster at the time, and he recognized that I had this blues thing going on, and it started the chicken picking stuff. And he's like, listen, if you really like that blues stuff and you want to add some more jazz to your repertoire, you should check out this guy, Larry Carlton and Robin Ford. And so he played me those records. And I remember as soon as I heard that, and also another guy that was at this jazz camp, he had a 335 and I had the Tele. He always wanted to check out a Tele. I now wanted to check out a 335, so we kind of swapped guitars for the classes and stuff that we had there and some jams. And so when I got back from that camp, I saved up money for the rest of the summer. I was working in a plastics factory, which may explain a few things. But I saved up money and I bought a Dotneck ES335 reissue. Because of Larry Carlton, and I remember I think my first Carlton record that I bought, because this is like 1983, there was a record called Friends that he did, and B.B. King was on it, and that spoke to me right away because I was a huge B.B. King fan at that point. So Larry Carlton and Robin Ford were kind of like my entree into the jazz world, and then when I went to college, there was a guy there that was studying guitar, and I started college a semester late because I took a semester off. And but when I got up there was a young man there that was, well, he was my same age, but we were both young then, named Peter McCann, who would later go on to North Texas State, and he's been a New York jazz guy for years. And Pete kind of turned me on to Mike Stern, which really spoke to me quite a bit, because he was a blues guy that got into jazz and was into the Hendrix thing.
This guy's just like me.
I was like, wow, this is magnificent. So that's where I discovered Stern and Schofield. And I was already kind of into Holdsworth because one of my buddies in high school was really into Holdsworth and kind of turned me onto that. And at one moment, the Holdsworth thing just clicked to me as far as appreciating it. I was like, oh, I dig these harmonies. I don't think I would ever, in my wildest dreams, play like that. But I dug some of the chord voicings, and certainly his tunes were awesome to me. So that's how I kind of got into it. I kind of went backward as I got older, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then I started getting into more like, well, Charlie Christian was a big crossover for me too. I had a book of transcription of Charlie Christian stuff because that was stuff that was easy for me to understand how to add some of that stuff to my blues playing. At that point, it made more sense to me. So Charlie Christian was a big one. And then of course, Wes Montgomery, Grant Green, guys like that.
Right on. And then, because it seems like Robin Ford is like the gateway drug.
Yes.
Because he's about as sophisticated as you can play, but still be playing blues, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I got to, I was very fortunate in the fact that I got to be kind of buddies with Robin, and we've done some work together. And I told him, I go, not that I ever wanted to play just like Robin, because I always wanted to do more of my own thing. I never wanted to ape his style per se, but I've probably learned more of how to apply theory to what I do from the way that Robin does stuff.
Yeah.
He just has a really cool way of taking some, concepts that are, once you get your mind around them, they're pretty simple per se, but you can apply them in a very sophisticated way over chord changes that prior to that might be kind of vexing. So yeah, he was a huge influence in many ways.
Still is, probably.
Still, absolutely. Yeah.
So the whole reason you're kind of on this tour, like you mentioned, you have a new, you played a gig in town here last night with a trio.
Yes.
And it's interesting, and I heard you tell the story yesterday, but I want to tell it again about kind of the origins of this particular trio.
Yes.
Which shares quite a bit of your DNA.
Yes, literally.
Literally.
Well, I've always had various different iterations of my bands over the years have been trios, maybe 4 pieces, so on and so forth. And I started messing around with a 4-piece band with a keyboard player, my son on drums, and really kind of fleshing out more of a kind of a funky instrumentally type of thing. And my son was starting to go up to the Twin Cities. I live in Milwaukee. My son went to school in St. Paul, where I taught for a spell at the McNally Smith College of Music, and we did a gig up there. And my son Dylan got acquainted with a guitar player from River Falls, a young kid named Dylan Sulphur, who was excellent, just a magnificent young guitar player. And so my son started going up and doing gigs with Dylan in various different iterations, and one of them was with this keyboard player. And so my son would always come home and say, "Dad, you should really check out this guy, Toby Marshall. He's this great keyboard player, this great B3 player that I've been playing with Dylan with." I'm like, yeah. And he's like, "Oh, you played with Bernard Allison for years," and yada, yada, yada. He's been a staple in Twin Cities, but he's kind of been retired. He's got young kids and, yada, yada, yada. So at one point, my son says, "Hey, Toby, the organ player, is coming down to Milwaukee to buy a B3, or not a B3, but a Leslie speaker from this guy, John Kames." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "We should really get together and jam." I'm like, "What?" And I'm traveling all the time and doing my thing. And so my son's like, "Oh, let's get together and jam with Toby." I'm like, just what I want to do on a day off is, jam with my son's buddies. So I was a little, not dismissive, but a little, like, "Okay, well, just tell me, remind me of the day again, and we'll make it happen." So lo and behold, just dropped my dog on tape. Anyway, so it's like the Wednesday before the Thursday that he's going to be in town, and my son Dylan's, "Toby's going to be in town tomorrow, Dad. What are we going to do? Are we going to jam?" And I'm like, "Well, we got that nice keyboard in the basement. Why don't we, if he comes in town, let's just go down the basement. We'll rock out for a while." He's like, "Dad, he's not going to play that piece of crap. He plays B3. I'm like, "Well, what do you suggest?" "Well, he's going to have it with him, Dad. We should just bring it in and put the furniture to the side in the front room and start jamming in the front room." I was like, "Oh, that'll be great. Your mom will really dig that, especially where we put a big scuff in the hardwood floor for where we were jamming with Toby. That's what I'm going to explain to her when she gets home, and she's going to dig that." So finally the Thursday rolls around, and my son's going to work. He was working at this coffee shop for a while. He's like, "I'll be back around 2, and then Toby's going to be here." I'm like, "Okay, let me try to figure out something." So I called up the studio, and I said, "Hey, Steve, I have no idea if you're even open today, but I know you have a B3 there wired up and ready to rock. I'm going to do this jam with my son and this buddy of his. Do you mind if we come over?" He's like, "No problem. Come on over a little after 2. I'll have everything wired up, and we'll record it." And so Toby comes to our house. I say to Toby, "Hey, nice to meet you. Dylan wanted to jam, so I booked us a session at the studio, and if it turns out great, I'll throw you some money and we'll start making a record." He's like, "That'd be fabulous." So we go over to the studio. I bring, a Vibrolux, and I think I brought the Greg Martin Les Paul that day. And I plugged it into the amp straight in, turned it up, and, we were just going to jam for the most part. And I said, "Let's do like a shuffle in G." And I counted it off, and that is the first song on our record. It's the first notes we ever played. We did that. And then the very second tune, I was like, "Let's do something funky in C." That's the second tune on the record. And then 2 weeks later, I knew right then and there that we had a magical a magical ensemble going on. So I brought him in 2 weeks later, and the Wildwood film crew guy came in and filmed the session. So we got 5 of the tunes on the record filmed. Anyway, so it was magical. So we put this record, and I was going to just put it out myself. September 9th was the date I was going to kind of put it out, and I printed up a bunch of copies. We did a pre-sale through my website and through Facebook and whatnot. And then I sent it to this label that I was affiliated with back in the day, and the guy's like, this is great. This is perfect for our label. We're doing this new instrumental label of this is perfect. You know, what do you guys want? I'm like, what? So basically, we're in negotiations now. I've got the contract. We're mulling it. It's all going to happen. I mean, barring any kind of catastrophe situation, it's going to be coming out on this label, which I'll post later. But it's a label that a lot of our buddies we've just mentioned are on. You know, Robin Ford and Eric Gales is on the label, and
it won't be hard to find.
It won't be hard to find. Thank you. Yes. So I'll keep you. And if you want to join our Facebook page, the name of this trio is Koch Marshall Trio, Koch, and then Marshall, like it sounds, Trio. And my son is on drum. My son's 22 years old. He's a drumming beast. And Toby's, he just plays B3. We haul that thing around everywhere, and it sounds glorious. So, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of my, there's this gospel, funk, jazz, blues, certainly, chicken picking, rock sensibility about everything I've done prior. But it's, you know, a lot of what I did before. I always had a Leslie simulator. I always implied organ stuff. And so now to have, did I say organ simulator? Stimulator?
No, somebody just commented that the plants look sad.
Yes, well, we're trying to work on that.
Yeah.
With our powerful life forces. Anyway, so to have this particular ensemble, it's like the perfect template for what I'm doing. Can you dig it?
Right on. So a lot of requests during that whole story spiel about some chicken picking demonstrations.
Okay.
So is there something, maybe a riff or something off the new album that demonstrates that kind of technique?
Well, I do a solo on one of the tunes, but you know, I'll just do. Everyone always asks me about that Spank It song, so I'll just this tune Spank It I came up with years ago. I'll just kind of get to it. So the idea of chicken picking, I do a couple of different ways. I stash my pick between my first and middle fingers, and I kind of go back and forth depending on what I'm doing. I do chicken picking with the pick and fingers, but I like the way that chicken picking sounds with just your thumb and your finger, and it's just the simple act. If I do it on the A string, I've got my first finger on the A string and my thumb on the same doggone string, and what happens is that the thumb plucks a note that's muted. And sometimes it's just a slight mute, but a mute nonetheless because your first finger is right behind it. And then you pop up with that first finger. So between the thud and the pop, the chicken takes flight. So I recommend people just kind of take a blues scale and just kind of... And then what you can do is you can add in an open string pull off, do a little triplet thing, and that's kind of a cool thing to practice. Okay. So in this particular tune, Spank It, I was just messing around one day, and I do a couple different things. So I'm doing the chicken pick on the D string there. And then I'm popping up with my my first finger on the D string and my middle finger on the G string. I'm just doing this little A thing at the second fret there on the D string and G string. And then I'll add that to it. And sometimes I'll add another beat there, or I'll add another one here. So for this particular thing, I'm going... doing like a D7 over A to the A7, and then to the A7 sharp 9, because I thought it was funny to do a country song with a Jimi Hendrix chord in it. I thought it'd be cool to go to the 4 chord, so I thought, well, what can I do there? So I'm doing this little thing where I just kind of do various different blasts of D7. That's that G over D. Chord, and I just kind of outline an E7 chord, and I go third 7, and then third 7, or 7 third, third 7, 7 third. You know what I mean by that? F7, G7, G sharp 7. Then I outline it like an A 13th chord. So. And that little kick there is a D over G. Now, when I go into solo land there, then I'll switch to pick and finger. You know. Okay, so when I'm doing the chicken pick with the pick and the fingers, it's the same premise. So what I did before, if I do it on the A string, is this. I do the nail of my middle finger, and I don't need much of a nail. You know, some people get into like putting fake nails on and stuff. I've never had the necessity to do that. As long as I have a little white showing above the cuticle, I got enough to pop the string. So if I put my middle finger on the A string and the pick being held by my first finger and thumb, it goes like that, as opposed to the thumb and finger. It's a subtle thing, but it's a lot brighter with the pick and finger. And then I'll do like little triple things, the thing that Danny Gatton used to do and Roy Buchanan, which I always thought was really cool. If I do this double stop here, if I'm an A, the thing great about blues is that is it major, is it minor? Yes, it's kind of both. So this particular double stoppy thing does major and minor, involving this minor third double stop. So I do it at the 6th fret on the G string and B string at the 5th fret. Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, plants. Anyway, so I'm going to do the chicken pick on the G string with my middle finger on the G string and pick. And to complete the triplet, I'm going to use my third finger on my right hand to get that B string there. But to help mute it, as soon as I hit the notes, I'm kind of lessening up the pressure down here to add muting down here as well. But I can do this double stop. I can do it here at the 5th fret, down at the 3rd fret, 5th fret, 8th fret, 10th fret, 13, 14, and up there at whatever the hell it is. 15, 16, something like that. Once I get up here, I always have to count. It's
all dots.
It's pathetic. Anyway, so if I go back and forth. That's another good one, too, to just kind of do that Chuck Berry. Stuff. So that's just good, clean fun right there, and kind of dirty.
A little bit. A lot of people are asking about what are some of your favorites. Like we've talked about Hendrix and kind of the next generation with Robin Ford and Larry Carlton, but what are maybe some of your more modern players that have caught your ear that you really enjoy?
You know, I have to be honest. The only exposure I've had to modern players is just like on Instagram and stuff, and because I listen to mostly old dead guys. I don't know why it is. But But Mark Lettieri, we were just talking about, magnificent guitar player from Snarky Puppy. Isaiah Sharkey, I saw him do some stuff that was mind blowing. That Mateus Asado is magnificent. And some younger guys like my buddy Jared James Nichols, who's from my home neck of the woods, and my son played with him for a hot minute. That Marcus King is fabulous. Yeah. A lot of these young, even though we know it's mostly clickbait, people are like, oh, the guitar is in danger of dying. Oh, Jesus. It's like, I see some young kids that are that are really great. And I think the tradition is going to be well maintained.
The kids are going to be all right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Another idea I wanted to ask about you was the art of sitting in. You've been kind of known as a solo guy, but you've sat in with Joe Bonamassa, Little Feat, on and on and on. So, in your mind, what are like some stalwart commandments of the art of the sit-in?
Well, that's an interesting thing. Basically, it depends on the situation, but clearly, you have to be respectful of that you're sitting in on somebody else's gig and they're doing you a favor, by having you sit in. And so you have to be respectful and not play too loud and fit into the groove. I mean, that's the thing I like to do the most is when you sit in with the band is, okay, what's this rhythm section like? And just lock in and find your piece. I mean, sometimes, like, especially when you're at one of these guitar things where it's a guitar group grope and there's like 15 guys on stage and everyone's going, me. A lot of times I just won't even play. I'll just sit there until it's time for me to do my little solo thing. The biggest thing for me is a couple different things there. Obviously, if it's just you and another guitar player with a band, and it's their band, you try to be as respectful as possible. And if they allow you to go, you go and you do your thing, but you're respectful of the fact that it's the other person's gig, and you don't try to, shall we say, be impolite by playing too loud, playing too long, being ridiculous, and so that's a big thing. But basically, is that you play at an appropriate volume, you suss out the arrangement of the song, and if there's no space for you, then stop playing. You don't have to play the entire time. And then you'll learn the tunes. That's one of the things. It's like if I'm asked to do a jam someplace, and even if there's no money involved, my personal pride and work ethic dictates that I'm going to learn that song and know it.
As if you wrote it.
Is it? Well, it's enough so that I will do a respectable job in being either a team player and playing the rhythm part and so on and so forth, or if I have to step out and do my thing. So it's just common sense, and a lot. There's like some guys that'll just noodle over everything, and that's their thing. I'm not here to judge. I just like, for me, you try to find the most. Shall we say, supportive place in that situation. And if it's your time to shine, then shine. But I find, like, especially the other night, we did this jam where there's Mark Lettieri and Andy Timmons, both incredible guitar players and musicians. And they sat in, and we're doing a song, and one of the songs we did was just a one chord vamp. It was a funk thing. But in order to keep that interesting, it's like when we go back and forth, it's not like, take this, dude, I'm going to shred your brain. It's more like, I'm saying this little thing, and then it's like almost like when you do those comedy sketches, and it's like you have to take what the person just did and embellish upon it, and you pass it around. That was more of what would happen, more of a conversational embellishment instead of kind of like these individual, deployments from the scabbard of, behold! You know what I mean?
You're always saying yes and.
Exactly.
Instead of yes but.
Exactly. Thank you. Well played. Well said.
All right. A lot of questions about slide.
Yes.
So let's unearth your slide there.
All right.
And you play pretty much slide in standard. Is that correct?
do. I do have tunes of mine that are in open tunings, mostly open E or open D, which are the same positions and so on, or open G. But most of my stuff is in standard tuning. So if I'm you know, if I'm on my telly, I'll go on that bridge pickup and I'll put that second position of the Fluence pickups in so it's a little meatier, and I might roll back the tone just a skosh. So you see, I'm pushing down with the slide. I discovered this last year. I don't know. It was June-ish. I was messing around, and I always played slide, and I would actually fret with the slide every now and again to get like glissandos. And I first heard Sonny Landreth do that. I remember he was doing something. I just thought, man, that sounds awesome. So I started to do that kind of stuff where I would actually press down with the slide. And it wasn't until last summer I was like, you know, Derek Trucks always really pissed me off. It's like his intonation was always spot on. And you're always like, well, you know, he plays slide all the time and he's some kind of super savant. So whatever, it just is what it is. And then finally I'm like, no. I'm not going to take that crap. I got to learn this crap. There's got to be something that's going to make this happen. So I started messing around with one of his. No. And I realized, oh my God, if I press down with the slide on the fret for just a split second, that kind of checks my tuning. So I'll give you an example. So if I do like just a major pentatonic-y type of run in B flat here. So if I just do conventional fingering. And I just do conventional slide after that. Sounds like that. Now if I press down with the slide. It almost sounds like it's compressed. It's a lot more ballsier sounding. Well, first one was just regular slide. Here's pressing down. Now, when I get to that last note, obviously I'm just doing regular slide where I'm over the fret and adding the vibrato, as opposed to actually fretting with the slide behind the fret. Now, that's all regular slide. But if I want to do one of these little... That's when I'll press down with the slide to get those faster kind of. Get the idea. So I'm always kind of going between pressing down with the slide and then doing conventional slide stuff. Mm-hmm. But that way I can just grab the slide at will and do stuff, and the intonation is more spot on, especially when you're doing like faster kind of like even arpeggio. Let's see if I'm in the key of A. I mean, spot on. You know what I mean?
Right on.
And when you listen to Derek now, you can kind of, even though we've discussed, he says, I'm not doing that. You know, I asked Jimmy Herring, I was like, Jimmy, is this what Derek's doing? He's like, I have no idea what he's doing, but it sounds like you've cracked the code. And now when you listen to him, you can kind of hear the slide hitting the frets here and there because it's just too spot on. I could be high on crack, but I don't think so because I don't do crack. So
it's just what we choose to believe to understand that he is human.
Exactly. Thank you. Exactly. Exactly correct.
All right. Any last minute questions here? Is the amp modded? Somebody's asking.
It is not. This one, actually, I just bought about a month ago. I was up in Toby, our keyboard player, lives in River Falls, Wisconsin, which is near Minneapolis, but on the Wisconsin side. And there's great music there, owned by my buddy Tommy Benz. And I went in there, and they had one of these amps. And, of course, I used my old Blom one that I've had back in the day. It's just, like, beaten to hell. Brickhouse music, it's called. And I went in there, and they had this amp, but it was immaculate. Of course, I've already screwed up the grill cloth, but it's just stock. And I didn't even take it into my tech yet. It's just stock. They sound good because if I have the amp on pretty low, but on about 3, they start breaking up, and that's what a lot of people don't like. But I dig. Even before I got these pickups, I would always put a mod in my Strats and Teles and Les Pauls to not lose any highs when I turn down the volume. So I could turn the amp up and turn the volume down on the guitar and have my clean sound and turn it up. You got your little bit overdrive. And a lot of times what I would do with a Telecaster, I'd just come with this guitar, that amp, turn it up to about 7, and then turn it towards the wall so that the only thing you were hearing was the back wash, which was more than enough. It sounded like the amp that took over the world. But it sounds it's like a plexi with reverb is what it sounds like. It's really a cool amp. And it's, a lot of people didn't understand what it did. Well, it's not a lot of people did, but I mean, they made it up until about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. They don't currently make them anymore. Most of them are in black Tolex, but they have the cream colored knobs. That's how you can kind of tell what it is.
Cool. One last question. When you're just talking about slide, we have to give the Itchy Bretta. Yes. Do you ever fret and slide a la Jack Pearson? We should give Jack Pearson a shout out.
Oh, yeah, I actually took a lesson from Jack Pearson. I was in Nashville about probably 10 years ago now, and I was a big fan of Jack's playing, and his slide playing perturbed me. So we so we had a lesson, and he did a thing where he would just say, well, play stuff with conventional figuring and then play it with slide afterward, which was great, but with that, you've got to play slide. You need to warm up so that you can calibrate. You know what I'm saying? The great thing about when you're fretting with the slide is that you're calibrating on the fly. Does that make sense? So it's like more of an immediate check, whereas the other one is you've got to practice it in order to get your intonation out. Whereas this is just like you're there. You know what I mean? You do. It takes a while to get to the point where the fretting is musical. It did take me a long time, and you don't hear the glissandos happening. It takes a little while to dial it in. But once you're there, man, you can pull the slide out, and it's a welcome friend instead of a foe.
You could always fall off that tightrope.
Yes.
When you're doing that. Well, should we give away some things?
I think
now?
we should. We have 3 sets of the Gristletone pickups, and lo and behold, what do we have here? Oh, it is the entry tickets.
That is right.
There are the entry tickets. There we go.
So everybody that we've had the giveaway going on for about a week now, and we have thousands and thousands of little tickets in there.
Yes. And
you are gonna pick out one.
I am indeed.
We're gonna do 3 of them, actually. Sorry.
All right, the very first one, the number is 493-4379.
That would be David Prince.
David Prince.
So we're going to set that one
aside. A regal soul.
He is.
You are our first
set that
winner.
aside. You think you could throw in one of your new CDs with these?
Yes.
Okay. I'm putting you on the spot live.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the Unrepentant CD that came out in April. The new Trio CD, I printed up, but since we're getting that deal, it's not yet available. We're going to, we did some pre-sales.
Yeah, way to backpedal.
Yeah, sorry about that. But we'll give this one. But please go to my website at gregkoch.com and sign up for our mailing list, or go to the Koch Marshall Trio page on Facebook and sign up.
Right on.
But yes, you can have an Unrepentant.
All right, so that's number 1. Number 2.
It is 445-8706.
Kevin Rexroth.
Kevin Rexroth.
You are a winner.
I could dig it.
And they're getting the whole set, the electronics, the pickups, the input jack.
So when you get the tickets, when you get the pickups, it comes with the actual pickups. It comes with this control panel. Because in this control panel is everything it takes, no 60 cycle hum. It changes the voices from the two different voices. And there's also a lithium ion battery in there. And it also comes with this input jack. And right under the conventional 1/4-inch input, there is a mini USB where you plug in your phone charger. And for an hour and a half-ish charge, you get 300 hours of plugged-in playing time. Can you dig it? I've never run out of juice, by the way.
That's like 2 Soul Blue songs, though.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I love my baby.
All right. And the last one here.
All right. It is 445-8653. Can you dig it?
Jonathan, I'm sorry in advance, Gritzmacher.
Gritzmacher.
Jonathan
Gritzmacher, you have won a Fishman Fluence Gristletone pickup package and a Unrepentant CD.
Dig it.
There you have it.
So to wrap up, for those playing Greg Koch bingo at home, have we hit all your catchphrases? Is there anything you've left out?
You know what? I've been pretty. I have been pretty tame this one. I don't think I've extrapolated too many times on the isms. What more can be said?
The internet never lies.
The internet never does lie.
So thank you for coming out, Greg, and taking
pleasure.
the time. Let's close with you playing something.
All right.
So they can go to gregkoch.com. Is that correct?
Indeed. All my CDs and instructional stuff. I've got about 14 or 15 titles with Hal Leonard, videos and books with videos and so on. I've got about 16 CDs now. I've got the signature pedals that are available, the Gristle King. The triple gristles were kind of topped off on, but you can, we might start a waiting list for that, so you can check that out. So there's that. And then I've got my Greg Koch Music Facebook page. I've got, of course, the Koch Marshall page, which we're trying to get launched.
Word.
And a YouTube channel as well, Greg Koch Music.
Dig it.
Dig it.
Well, let's hit it.
I'll do something here. I'll just play a little slide on the way out. How's that sound for the kids?